Some historical points are, I was born November 7th, 1923, which means I'll be 88 this year, 2011. I was born in Fremont, Nebraska. My mom's name was Virginia. She was called Virgie. My dad's name was Herman Stephen, and he was called Bud. There were 5 children in the family. My oldest was my brother Bob. He ended up being a Marine and coming home alive in the Second World War. The next was me, and I was always the sassy one, getting in trouble with my mouth. Then came Charlotte Laverne, and she was called Babe. And the third one was Shirley. She ended up being a diabetic like I am currently. And the last one and only one living of my siblings is Bonnie. She lives in Norfolk, Nebraska, and her husband is in a nursing home with Parkinson's. I can remember during my childhood we always lived down near the railroad where my dad worked. And our houses in those days had basements because we'd have snow in the winters, had to have a big furnace, and we'd go downstairs and have shows and performances in the basement and charge the kids in the neighborhood a penny to come and see it. Sometimes when the weather was bad, we'd hang our clothes down in the basement. Take days to dry because the basement would be damp from the clothes. We always had a garden. Always had to work in the garden, hoeing and weeding. Had a lot of fun, but when you said, I don't have anything to do, my mother, being a quiet Christian woman, would say, well, let's see. And Yvonne would be cleaning all the dishes out of the kitchen cupboard and washing them. And Babe, my sister, might be taking all the bedding off of the beds and taking it out to the line. And my brother might be buffing the floor. And the 2 little ones, when they were born, they might be dusting. I do remember that we would wax the floors with Johnson's paste wax on our knees, and then my mother would tie old wool things on our shoes, and we'd get to play skate and shine and buff them. That was fun, but to her, it was a way of working the kids where we didn't think it was work. And if and when we got in trouble, which Yvonne did frequently because of her sassy mouth, my mother would say, I'll have to talk to your father. And we knew then that it was too late because my father was the head of the house even if he was never home. And you knew if you broke the rule, you were going to pay the consequences. So when my dad would come home after stopping at the bar and having a few beers, my mother would say, Bud, you need to speak to the children. She didn't tell him what the problem was. He didn't ask. And either Bob would sit in one room on a chair to think about what he had done. Yvonne would be in another room on a chair, and Babe in a third room. And the 2 little ones I don't remember because there was a span of 8 or 10 years between those children being born. And there we would sit. We didn't read. We didn't have a radio to listen to. We didn't do homework. We sat there and thought about why we were on that chair. Let me tell you, 2 and 3 hours later, you thought a lot about it and you determined you weren't going to be in trouble like that again. Rarely do I remember ever being spanked, but once a year maybe my dad would say, well, I guess you guys have asked for it, and he'd make a performance of lining us all up, and Yvonne always got to the end of the line, take off his belt with a lot of things and acting out, and then he'd go down the line and say, hold out your hand, and he'd smack our hand with the belt. By the time he got to me, I was in hysterics. I don't remember hardly ever getting hit because I was so screaming and hollering and carrying on that I think my dad was trying to stop laughing. Okay, I gotta take a breath. One thing I vividly remember is I was out on the front porch secretly trying to smoke. And my dad came home, and naturally he could smell the smoke, so he came out. And instead of him getting real mad, he said, "Oh, well, if you're going to smoke, let me teach you how." And in those days, Camel cigarettes were the strongest thing I think you could find. So he would give me one cigarette and light it and say, "No, that's not the way. You got to inhale." I worked through almost, I suppose, that whole package of Camels, getting violently sick, and he kept feeding me these cigarettes and teaching me how. To that day forward, I have never touched a cigarette. So if you have a problem with cigarette smoking, just try doing it with a cigarette that you cannot stand and smoke incessantly under forceful suggestion. That might cure you. Then my brother and his wife, whom he married in California, came home to Nebraska, and my father was dying then of leukemia and throat cancer. And I had graduated. We'd moved to Norfolk in my senior year and was working in a drugstore. And I'd saved about $40. I think my whole salary was $6 a week, which I gave to my mother. And because when Bob and them came home, he was in the Marines, I wanted to go out to California with him. There was nothing in my hometown that was supposedly keeping me there for a future. So I talked my dad into going. He was very much against it, but he gave me the rest of the money, said, "Okay, but when you go to California, the door doesn't open for you to come back home." Which meant, if I choose to leave, I was not to come back home because that door wouldn't be opening. So I went to California, lived in an apartment with Bob and Eddie while he was finishing up his Marine duties, and went to work at Lockheed building B-17 bombers, which was kind of funny because I had already been working in one bomb plant in a town where my cousin Betty lived, making bombs or filling bombs. Then I go to California and I work in Lockheed Aircraft making the bomb release cabling, which was in the belly of this B-17, all scrunched up in a tiny space, binding all these wires and cables together that go up to the cockpit and to the bomb release guy. And that's where I met my future husband and only husband, Marvin. Let's see, what else exciting? We went to the beach one day. Have to go to California Beach. I was in a bikini. I had a turban on my head. I thought I looked very becoming. I got the worst sunburn you could ever hope for. Nobody in those days told me about sunscreen. I said, "Well, you can have the beach," because it didn't get in the water. It was too sandy. The beach itself was sand, and you just sat there and posed like everybody else, getting red in the sun.
Didn't know today would be our last, or that I'd have to say goodbye to you so fast. I'm so numb, I can't feel anymore. Praying you just walk back through that door and tell me that I was only dreaming. You're not really gone as long as I believe. There will be another angel around the throne tonight. Your love lives on inside of me, and I will hold on tight. It's not my place to question, only God knows why. I'm just jealous of the angels around the throne tonight. made my troubles feel so small, and you were always there to catch me when I'd fall. In a world where heroes come and go, well, God just took the only one I know. So I'll hold you as close as I can, longing for the day when I see your face again. But until then, God must need another angel around the throne tonight. Your love lives on inside of me, and I will hold on tight. It's not my place to question, only God knows why. I'm just jealous of the angels around the throne tonight, singing hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. I'm just jealous of the angels around the throne tonight.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Jesus, 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 there's just something about that name. Jesus, 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 let all heaven and earth proclaim. Kings and kingdoms may all pass away, but there's something about that name. I love you. I love you. I love you.
Singing hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. I'm just jealous of the angels around the throne tonight.